A couple other noteworthy performances from the weekend. Denim and Pearls ran a huge race, 98 buyer in the Beaumont yesterday. Wesley Ward had a horse that he had sent to Royal Ascot come back and win the Palisade Stakes. Vava and Alvastar renewed their rivalry in the Madison. That was a really exciting race. We came up a little short with Vava at West Point, but those are just clearly to me the two best fillies in that filly and mare sprint division. So they put on a show. In terms of individual accomplishments, how about Frankie Dettori winning 6 straight races at Santa Anita? He capped it off with Nothing Like You in the Santa Anita Oaks, and that was a big upset. A lot of people were expecting Kinza. Kinza was the kind of horse that had enough buzz that a lot of people were basically saying, oh, maybe she should try the boys in the Derby. And then lo and behold, another Baffert horse comes and blows her off the racetrack. Must be nice to have that level of arsenal. So that was, those are a couple of the noteworthy results. But the other thing about Frankie's run is these were not a bunch of favorites that he was riding. Like Ball Don't Lie paid $660. Resinte Rompere paid $18.20. Roberta's Love paid $21.60. Catherine Marissa paid $15. Nothing Like You paid $16.40, and Royal Charter paid $10.80. So 5 out of the 6 were double-digit mutuals. So it's just, it's kind of a full circle thing for us, John, because like this episode 0 of this show, we were just doing our little tease. We talked about Frankie Dettori and his retirement, his send-off, his farewell at Royal Ascot. But man, I think we're the benefit that he decided to do the lame farewell tour and then non-retirement thing, because he is one of the best riders in the world, pound for pound, and he really hasn't done this before in terms of riding in America full time. He's kicked ass at Santa Anita. I'm sure he's going to kick ass in the Kentucky or New York or wherever he goes for the rest of the year. So that was what stuck out to me otherwise from the weekend. But I know John's got a little bit of a bee in his bonnet because we were talking about, or unless you want to talk about Frankie first.
Yeah, just talk about Frankie first, if you don't mind. I mean, it's awe-inspiring when you have a jockey that wins that many races in a row, whether it's consistent, $5,000 claiming races or races of this caliber. And Joe, you mentioned that all of the good stats of the fact that majority of the horses that Frankie rode were double-digit winners. And you go back and you think, all right, the betting public's pretty savvy. They pick up on things like that. So imagine, just the fact that he was winning all these races, and the horses still weren't favorites by the end. I mean, they still, they still weren't even the chalk going into the race. So, a tip of the cap to him. I'm so glad that he's not retiring, this year. And the thing that surprised me is I was going through, which riders were going to ride which horses in the Kentucky Derby. As of now, he still doesn't have a mount. He doesn't have a mount in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that he will, but as of this moment, the top dozen or 15 or so horses that are planning on running the Kentucky Derby have not selected him. So it just, to me, that was a head scratcher. Obviously, that'll be taken care of in the next week or so once things continue to focus and work their way through. But yeah, as of now, some of the top riders, including him, Torres doesn't have a mount. Juan Hernandez doesn't have a mount. Lascano doesn't have a mount for the Kentucky Derby. Again, all those things will be, addressed, I'm sure, over the next week or two. But Frankie Dettori, just, in his swan song of his year, the back 9 of his career, is quickly turning his life into a Disney movie.
Yeah. Incredible. He's obviously got a full personality too. So it's great to see him catch on in America. But on the Derby topic.
On the Derby topic,
on it now.
Thank you. No, I'll keep it brief. So Hades, we decided, was feeling good. He really only ran like half a mile, 5 furlongs in the Florida Derby. And we're going for that last bite of the apple in Lexington to try to run in there. And of course, as we entered the horse, they're like, oh, by the way, the Wine Steward is going to be running, coming off a 7-month layoff, and to try to see if he can get some points and get himself back in the Derby picture. So it's going to be an interesting race. It's not going to be an easy race, but it's a grade 3 at Keeneland. It shouldn't be that easy. In this day and age of people constantly beating the drum of, you need to run your horses more. You need to have your horses, why they're so brittle. They're so, blah, blah, blah. Why are you giving your horse 6-8 weeks between races and blah, blah. And I understand, where that pessimism and criticism come from. But we decided to run Hades in the Lexington. Not that I need to give a reason why to defend myself, but I want the audience to understand why certain decisions are made, because it helps them understand the rationale of what we do. So Hades came out of his race, and I would say that, again, he looked at it as if it was like a 5-furlong breeze. He really didn't get a chance to run. He came out of it great. We didn't have to give him any major fluids or anything like that, because he just didn't run very hard, very far, I should say. So when we were kicking around the idea of what should we do with him next, we had a whole game plan all set of sending him to Monmouth, our backyard racetrack, running him in the Long Branch, and then 4 weeks later in the Pegasus, and then hopefully 4 weeks later in the Haskell. And we could have done that, and we probably would have won, one, if not both of those Haskell preps for him. But Joe, he was doing so well, and really he was the second, third choice in the Florida Derby, that we felt like he didn't show his best race, and physically he was doing great. Why not run him in the Lexington and see what happens? Now, unless he wins the Lexington, he probably won't have enough points. It looks to me, based on my calculation, that you're going to need 41 points to guarantee a spot, because you got the 2 horses coming in from Japan that are taking up 2 of the 20 stalls in the starting gate. But what people have to understand is that we at DJ Stable take every horse's personality into consideration before we make decisions. So sometimes horses do need 6 or 8 weeks between races, aka or i.e., I guess is a better way of putting it. When we did it with Helium, he needed that extra time between the Tampa Bay Derby and the Kentucky Derby, because he was still developing. He still needed time to fill out, and there were a couple of things mentally that we needed to work with him. Hades, on the other hand, ran his 2 best races 3 weeks apart. When he won as a maiden, and then we wheeled him back in again. It was a maiden and a other than. It wasn't like a grade 1 into the Lexington. But he ran his 2 best races, and then we ran him back again and ran a huge race in the Holy Bull. So they were all within 4 or 5 weeks of each other. And for him, that's his clock. He likes to run every month or so, if not sooner. So we're giving him the opportunity to do that. We're monitoring him carefully. We're not going to put a horse in harm's way just for the sake of having a chance to get more points for the Kentucky Derby. Why the hell would we ruin a good horse, or potentially ruin a good horse, just because we want him to run in the Kentucky? That's ludicrous. Absolutely asinine if we did that, because we worked so hard to get a horse in at that level of the caliber of racing. So for those haters out there, you can't have it fucking both ways. You can't say, why aren't you running your horses more often? And then when we run a horse, because we feel like that he's doing well, when we run a horse after a couple of weeks, after basically a public breeze in the Florida Derby, you can't say, why are you running your horse? And at 2 weeks, you're going to ruin him. And that's exactly the way that guy sounded, by the way. I'm not hiding. I'll hide his name, but I won't hide his voice. But Joe, obviously, if we felt like that Hades wasn't a legitimate top 15 or 20 colts in our division, we wouldn't be doing this. Number one, we more importantly wouldn't be doing it if we thought any way, shape, or form it was going to hurt the horse, because we feel like that he owes us nothing and he's got a long career ahead of us. And I have a partner in this horse, so it's not just my decision. It's my decision. It's his decision. It's Joe Orsino. It's decision who's won big races before. So for the people out there who are just taking pot shots about why you're doing this, yeah, you know what? 90% of the time, you're going to be right. We shouldn't be doing certain things with horses because they're not going to win. And if we win the Lexington and we run in the Kentucky Derby, you're right. You have a 95% chance that you're going to be right if you bet against us. But even 95% chance if you bet against anybody in the Kentucky Derby. And the whole point of the exercise is to try to maximize your horse's health and maximize your horse's potential.